A farewell to arms. Nosgoth's final days are upon us. So, well, Nosgoth has been cancelled. Now, I can only speak for myself, but I can't say that I am surprised. Back when it was first announced, people were generally split into a few groups. Those who thought that it could kickstart the resurrection of the Legacy of Kain, those who thought that it deviates from the story-driven lock formula so much that it's effectively stillborn and thus would do nothing to the franchise, and those who thought that regardless of whether Nosgoth lives or dies, the franchise will remain in hibernation. The logic behind the latter being that, if Nosgoth, the multiplayer game, succeeds, then it will be a signal for Square Enix to make more multiplayer and not Legacy of Kain, and that if it fails, then it's the entire franchise that fails. So basically the last group were the people who were the most mad when Nosgoth was announced, and I'm just gonna throw it out there, that is what I thought. I was in that last third group. However, it was definitely a positive indication that at least Square Enix remembered about the IP that they have, the Legacy of Kain IP. So what I think with regard to Nosgoth cancellation, well, back when it was announced, I thought that it could catch on. But as the time passed, I came to believe that it was stillborn, at least with the impression that I had, that Square Enix didn't exactly support the developer team a lot. And as such, I am really not surprised that Nosgoth is being cancelled now. Essentially, Square Enix showed that they remembered about the IP, but weren't willing to commit a lot of resources to revive the franchise like they did with Deus Ex, like they did with Tomb Raider, and as they tried to do with Thief. Essentially, I think that Square Enix still remembers that it has the IP. The very attempt at doing Nosgoth, as well as Dead Sun before that, it was an indication that they are willing to try something, but the way they went about it clearly shows that it is far from being at the top of their priorities, which is, I think, how it was before Nosgoth was announced. And this means that we are back to square one, we are back to the pre-Nosgoth status quo. Not only that, there's a message on the Nosgoth website that is saying that the other Legacy of Kain proposals, if there ever are any, will be independent. Now, obviously, this does not mean that there is anything in the works, or that there ever will be, but it does indicate that the IP might just not be canned forever. Now, I don't believe that it did any significant damage to the chances of us seeing a new Legacy of Kain someday, but I think that's because these chances, they were very, very low at the very beginning. And I do believe that we might as well have to wait for another half a decade before we hear anything substantial. So these are my thoughts. What are yours? No, really, I'm curious. I'm genuinely curious. I'm a fan of Legacy of Kain, so I don't want to wait for a half a decade.